We are proud to introduce episode 10 of Origins Unknown podcast. My name is Claire Huntington, and together with my co-host Chris Holt, we would like to thank you so much. It seems surreal that we have already been doing this for 10 weeks. The amount of support, community growth, and learning happening has exceeded all of our expectations. We are excited to introduce this two-part series featuring our first foster parent and fellow Canadian, Chris. Chris and his wife Nicole became foster parents to adopt one of his family members to keep them in the family. As adoptees, foster parents are key figures in our stories that we often overlook and can't usually get information regarding. It is strange to think that as we are being processed through the system, that we were placed in foster care. We would also like to thank our newest Patreon, Melissa Good, who subscribed at the OUP Lite tier. Thank you so much to all of our Patreons for your support.
I think I walked the long way home. Now the phone just pick me up and hold me close when things get rough. And you never walk the road alone, 'cause we've all got our origins unknown.
Welcome to Origins Unknown podcast. My name is Chris Holt.
And I'm Claire Huntington. And today with us, we have a very special guest. We have our first and possibly youngest foster parent and a fellow Canadian, Chris. Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
How's it going, guys? So yeah, my name is Chris. I live in Ontario. And the short start of the story is, I found out about my biological niece, and I just got married May of 2006, and found out about her. And in order to adopt her, keep her in the family, I had to become a foster parent. That's actually where it started.
Interesting. Okay, so this is really intriguing for me because I really, honestly, I know nothing about foster care. I know nothing about foster care systems and how it all works. So it's really awesome to have you on because I think a lot of people, when we talk about adoption, a lot of people just think of adoption, but I think that there are so many other gray areas and other facets of this umbrella that is really the point of this podcast is to showcase and share stories like yours. So what we're going to do is just kind of bounce some questions back and forth between me and Claire, and we can kind of go from there.
Sounds good.
All right. So first question we have, what's the difference between fostering and adoption, and why do children get placed in foster care?
So there's actually a few different options when it comes to fostering or adoption. And myself and my wife, we were actually in that situation, I guess. We were foster to adopt parents. So there's a straight foster care. There's foster to adopt. We were also the emergency foster parents, which meant if there was a child that had to be taken out of the home for any reason at any hour of the day, they could call us and they could come to see us and stay with us until they figured out something else.
Okay.
Foster child is anybody who's going to be with us while the parents are getting cleaned up for whatever reason, or if they just have something going on where the child was taken from their home, they will stay with us for however long. And foster to adopt was several children that we actually had in our care that was going to be an option for whatever reason or another. They ended up going back to their biological families. But so I mean, there's the difference between them, I guess, is a little more permanency over anything.
Okay, so you're essentially, like, for some foster parents, they're kind of essentially on call, like whenever something might come up type of thing?
Part of it was, yes.
Yeah,
so
okay.
we would have like the foster child in our home, and we could still get a call for emergency, or we also did relief as well. So when there was families that were going, say, traveling to the States or something, and they're not allowed to take their foster child for whatever reason, they can come and we will give them that relief. So they'll stay with us for maybe a week or two or a weekend or whatever it may be.
So on that vein, how does a child enter into the foster care system? What are the different ways?
Legally, I probably couldn't speak to it, but with my experience, it would be a matter of a child who was at school and a counselor or a teacher might have seen marks on them or have some sort of question as to what might be going on at home. There's been children who have brought themselves into care. And essentially, if there's a call made to Children's Aid, over the welfare of a child, then Children's Aid will actually go investigate that, and they'll see there at that point if there's something that needs to be done or the child needs to be taken from the home and then placed into foster care. Like I said, it might not be for a long period of time, but they would still come to our house as opposed to.
Okay.
So who actually brings, who will actually bring the child to you? Like, would it be a caseworker or CPS or caseworker?
Caseworker.
Okay, cool.
Okay. And then I don't know if you know this, but like how long does a child usually stay in foster care? If that is there an average or something that's typical?
No, I would say it's really all over the place. If I had to give it an average, which I'm not sure if you really want to use that, but if I had to give an average, I'd say probably go 3 months, 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
What's involved in the process of applying to be a foster parent?
So in order to be a foster parent, you actually go through quite a substantial amount of paperwork. They want to know your family's history, your history. They get pretty deep in with it. They want to know if there's any type of sexual abuse or alcohol abuse, drug abuse. They may ask you about your grandmother, your aunts, and your uncles, and they actually want to know. They'll put you on a scale from like 1 to 5, whether if you drink, if you socially drink or you have like a drink like once or twice a year, they'll put you under like a 2, which for us sometimes was pretty. It made you kind of feel worse when you're like, no, I'm not like a social drinker. I just like it once or twice a year or something like that. Yeah. So it's rough. You have to put a lot of yourself out there. But I mean, essentially it's for the safety of the child, right? They want to know ahead of time where they're going to be going and where they're going to be spending their time. You do have to get background checks done.
Oh yeah. I was just wondering if there was a psychological profile involved with the screening process.
So there's not a technical, like you're not seen by a doctor or anything like that.
Okay.
It comes within the questionnaire. Like they will pick out, they'll ask you some of the same questions, slightly different.
Okay.
And it may seem repetitive when you go through them, but for them, that's telling them, that's kind of giving them a little bit of direction as to how you might think. So it's kind of, I don't want to say it's cool to go through, but I mean, you definitely, you question some of the things you're answering and realize that it's for a specific reason. And it also happens when you'll have monthly meetings with your worker and stuff like that. They'll come in.
Oh, cool.
Your home, make sure everything's okay. You do go through an extensive home checklist kind of thing that you have to have before or while a child is in your care. Everything from fire exits to where things are, can things be locked down to the child. So you have to go through pretty extensive.
Okay. And I guess just for our listeners, just in case this was missed, but this is for Canadian kind of foster care, which I'm assuming is going to be slightly different than American foster care.
Now, I would say that Ontario would even be different from Canada.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So,
different from other places, other countries.
So interprovincial foster care system, it's different every province. So I don't know about the States, but I think it's the same. But the really difficult part about adoption and foster care is that the legislation differs depending, for at least for adoption, what year you were born. And then foster care differs from province to province to state. So it's also very difficult to adopt foster kids from different provinces. Just because there's a foster parent in a different province, you can't necessarily put a kid there. So your resources for foster parents are largely allocated to your own province. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That will actually differ from city to city as well. So when we got started, we actually went through London because that's where our daughter was born.
Okay.
And we lived in St. Thomas. So we did have a worker through London. We went and did what's called Pride training to be a foster parent through London. And then after she was fully adopted, we named her, we brought her home from the hospital, everything like that. So we've had her from day one. When she was fully adopted was when we went, sorry, let me back that up. when we found out about her, in order to be kin, we had to become foster parents if we wanted to adopt her. So that's why we had to go the foster parent route.
Got it. So that's the foster to adoption type of thing.
Right.
Okay.
So once we had that done and she was adopted within the next year, within the next year, we decided at that point, we went through all the training, we went through all the book lists and all that kind of stuff. So let's continue on with it. So we actually went on to having, I think we figured probably about 15 children within 5 years in our care. And
wow,
some of them were relief. 4 or 5 of them were actually meant to be adopted, but for whatever reason, they ended up going home.
Okay.
So what was the other question you asked?
All right.
I just want to sorry, Chris, really quickly.
Yep.
So just to backtrack, so you adopted your niece, correct?
Yeah.
So this is our Chris, our first instance of an in-family adoption. One of the classifications we talked about. So for our listeners who are just tuning into this podcast, there are different types of adoption. There's closed adoption, which is largely anyone before 2000 was a closed adoption where the records are sealed. Open adoption is where adoptees can usually have like some sort of relationship with the birth parents. And then in-family adoption is when someone will actually adopt a family member to keep them in the family.
All right. So, Chris, what are the most significant challenges associated with being a foster parent for you?
For myself, the challenges we had as foster parents were, I guess, one of them being in a smaller city. We know a lot of people, and it's hard to really kind of get away from having whatever child in your care, and you're going out and you're shopping around Walmart or you're shopping around other stores, and you come across like the birth parents. Those interactions, there could be awkward interactions and stuff like that. It makes it difficult when a lot of people know you and they're going to know your business. That tends to be pretty difficult.
Does that happen often?
Yes.
Wow.
It happens almost. So being in St. Thomas, there's almost 40,000 people here. My wife has lived here like her whole life. And I'm a social butterfly. So I just happen to...
You know.
We actually had 2 previous foster children who go to that same school. Now, they didn't typically know. So we'd watch them come in. We'd watch them walk by. Their parents may see us and try to avoid us. We'd go to like the YMCA and go swimming. And like they would be there with their kid or something. And they'll go to the other side of the pool. Like it didn't have to be awkward, but in their sense, in their cases, they tried to avoid us as much as possible.
I could see that too. For just going from their point of view too, like it would probably bring up a trigger, like wanting your child. A lot of times we talk about birth mothers and like that hallmark view of adoption that we see is not always the case. A lot of times birth parents are really, they may have done something that wasn't what they wanted to do and they're fighting for their kids back. So they're going through the steps. And I think maybe seeing foster parents could be a trigger of that time, almost like bring up a bad memory.
If there was parents out there where something happened, and there was like, if somebody had made a call to a child saying that something was wrong, maybe they just need the house cleaned up, maybe they didn't have, enough groceries at the time, that kind of stuff does happen. The majority of what we had was pretty upsetting and negative things to the children. So I do get that the trigger would be there for people to see them.
Yeah, like addiction is addiction, and it's a real thing and it's challenging, and it's it's unfortunate, but
our main concern at that point is the children. No matter what somebody seems to be going through, that's why we did it, was because somebody needs to be able to help these kids at the time. So if that meant they come to stay with us for a few months while parents are getting cleaned up or getting their lives together and stuff, then that's what it was, and we were more than happy to help at the time.
Oh, that's amazing.
What is the most rewarding part of being a foster parent?
knowing that if a child's kind of gone through a rough start, watching them develop and grow, meeting these goals and stuff that might not have been there. We had a child in our care. When she was born, she's put on the Finnegan scale, which is a scale. It's like a scale to 10. That if they're born with any kind of drugs in their system or anything like that, they're put on a scale. So the one child we had was actually like 15 on the scale. She went up above this rating of 1 to 10. We actually had to give her a shot of morphine every four hours for the first month of her life.
Jeez.
We were told we had to feed her, we had to bottle feed her away from us because she would hallucinate while she was going through withdrawals and stuff like that. She had marijuana in her system, Oxycontin in her system, and yeah.
And this is an infant?
Yeah, she was days old.
Whoa.
Days old. So yeah, so we had to. So when that kind of stuff happens, and I mean, you worry about that first month because you're basically keeping her medicated to help wean her off these drugs that are in her system. When you go to those doctor appointments and they're meeting their weight goals, or they're growing properly, and these doctors who have been through all this kind of stuff, they go, we're so proud to see that she's coming so far, and she's gaining that kind of stuff. Really kind of makes it worth it.
I just feel like any kid that has you guys as a foster parent has just won the lottery. You're so fun. It
sounds like a lot of these kids are coming from unfortunate situations, so it's very easy for them to be exposed to things that obviously aren't going to get them ahead or put them on a path towards success or anything like that, or to just thrive. And I think it's just beautiful that that's what you guys do, is you create a safe haven.
The way we treated it was we treated every child coming into our care like they were our children. They need to bond. They need to be able to feel confident and comfortable with people around them to help them grow. So they were very much our family, because in certain aspects of it, there was an opportunity that they might stay with us for good. You want them to develop, even if they're with you for a short period of time. You want them to go home knowing that their development didn't stop. It wasn't just this kid's going to visit and continue on slightly living.
Yep.
While things got figured out.
Yeah, I think in this country, in America, just growing up and seeing any type of portrayal in movies or shows, it always just showed a foster home to be a very kind of scary place. Like, it's just a halfway house type of place. Like, the people that run these places weren't super invested, or they just viewed it as, oh, this person and this child's only with me for a certain period of time, so I don't need to, go above and beyond because it's temporary. But obviously that's not the case. And I think it paints a terrible light on foster care. And again, maybe there are homes like that, but
there are.
I'm just
100% are.
I'll be honest. There were a couple times when we came across foster parents who, unfortunately, they had like as many kids in there as they could, and
like a factory.
They do give you money to help with things, but to them it's treated like a job. So when we talk about being relief foster parents, we had seen a couple foster parents who went away on vacation and specifically kept their foster kids at home.
Oh,
that's terrible.
So that does very seldom, because we knew a lot of good ones. And that's the thing. It does hurt a little bit when you watch. It might seem very minimal, but when I'm watching the show and you're watching something like CSI or Chicago PD, Chicago Fire, Chicago Med, all these shows, and you see it portrayed as, it's a very negative space of just these people who don't care. You're just a number to them. You're just in there for a paycheck, and it does hurt, because you sit there going, now do people see us that way? But I don't think they have, because we try to, we're so proud of them. We can. They won't now. 3 to 6 months, we can know them for 2 days. We're going to treat them exactly the same way we would with our own children.
And I think that's just like so incredible to hear. And that's why we wanted to open this up to a bunch of different avenues of this community. And I think hearing your rewarding story, I think that if we could get a lot of other great people like you to foster and, have this as a call to arms. And I'm hoping that there are we have some questions following this for prospective foster parents, because it does get seen as a very difficult job, and it's even portrayed as a very difficult thing to do, more so difficult than rewarding. And so hearing you talk about this and seeing you light up and the joy that it's bringing you and your wife, it totally reframes it into something that's accessible and human. And also an age thing. I wouldn't have thought, because you were 21 when you did it.
We figured out the math, and I was like just turned 22.
22. That's ridiculous. Like, I would have 22. Never thought that.
No. At 22, I was not mature enough. I was not mature enough.
But you were. He probably wasn't. So that's the thing, is that it's like, if you think you can help, there's never a right time to help your fellow man. You don't need to be completely set up, and you don't need to feel perfect. And hearing you talk really open and honestly about the process made you feel bad, but it's to protect the child. I think that's really incredible.
Yeah.
It's hard. And as you talk about, a call to arms it is very rewarding. It is also, you have to be mentally and emotionally ready for it. At one point, to tell you about our youngest, we had our youngest from the time she was 3 months old to the time she was 3 years old. And she went back to a father who should not have gotten her back. We went on. She was one of the children who was at the school that my daughter would go to, and they would see each other, and there would be upset things happening. Her stepmother would basically give her trouble for talking to my daughter. And that was rough. Fast forward a couple more years, and she brought herself back into care. So the two girls we have now is my daughter and our youngest, who is 10. And she left us for 7 years. We stopped being foster parents. It was very hard. We decided to move on because we kept taking, when we took children in, we took in babies, infants, like toddlers, the whole time. When that happened, we said, you know what? Our daughter needs a chance to grow up and not, very hard. When you have babies, it's very hard to go out places. If you're not bottles, nap times, diaper bags, all that kind of stuff kind of keeps you grounded for a while.
Yeah.
So we had stopped and years had passed. We only found out because she had brought herself back into care at 9 years old. They called us and said, we had your number on the file. We went, yes.
Wow. That's amazing.
But that's you didn't have to go with it. We're like, yeah.
But that is almost like, just to think, as a 9-year-old, she did it herself. Like, that just honestly is a testament to whatever situation she was in. Like, that, it's heartbreaking to make a decision like that at 9. That's a very mature decision to make. It's scary. I mean, wow, that's a brave little girl. And
that's what you said, Chris. Like, it had to have been hard for her. Like, I wouldn't have, we talk about we weren't mature at 21. I wouldn't have been able to do that at age 9. And it's a testament that you guys showed her what a wonderful home was.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And like, what a great feeling for her. We don't hear a lot of happy stories, I hate to say. And, but
we considered it our family being completely there. It was the oddest feeling because she came to visit us. She had no idea who we were at this point. She kind of forgotten. She was 3.
Yep.
She came to visit us with a worker, and she seemed very unsure. We were up till, I think, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, going through all of our photos, pulling out this big album that we could show her the next day. So we put it on our TV, and we're going through the photos. We're like, here's where we took you camping. Here's where you did this. Here's where you did that. To try to connect with her, so she knew that this was going to be a good place. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't talk too much on it, but as it stands, we're very close to having full custody of her.
That's awesome.
So something that when she left us at 3, we thought we'd never see her again, to the point where she's with us now. She's been with us for over a year. She came when COVID started.
Got it.
Whirlwind of stuff.
Yeah.
And when we talk about kids who meet these goals and who do so much better, we talked to the school that she was at. She wasn't listening. She didn't have friends. Things were going very bad. To her report cards now, and she's got these B's, and she's got an A on a test, and her teachers are saying that she's growing so well and things.
That's amazing.
It makes it worth it, and we're so happy to have her back.
Yeah, and that it goes back to how important it is, I think, just for the development of any human being to be amongst, a loving, supportive, kind of healthy environment. I think it's so important. But the next question I had was, what resources are available to foster parents in Canada?
No, so CAS does offer classes you can take. If you're dealing with a child who, any children with like medical issues, or any children who are LGBTQ, that you go through all these types of training that they will give you to better understand the child that's in your care. You do have our youngest now has her own lawyer for court cases, because she's old enough now to kind of have a say. So we supply with legal counseling and stuff like that. There is other counseling that she's going to need that will be provided. They try very hard, I guess, to make sure there's anything you need to understand or anyone that you need to reach out to kind of help you through a process. They have those contacts, and they're willing to kind of give you whatever you need if you ask for it.
So when you say she has a say, that's really interesting to me, that she's old enough now that she has a say. Not to be, not to be ignorant to that, but how old, what age does that happen where she now has her own lawyer and her own voice? That's incredible.
I would say it'd probably be about 9 or 10.
9 or 10.
Yeah.
I didn't. Wow.
So that's exciting.
they have a voice to a certain extent, and it will help in the process. Because it's a non-biased legal partner who can kind of help voice her opinion and stuff. So so we have monthly meets or so with her lawyer, and anything coming up with court cases, and he'll talk to her and ask her what she wants, and if there's anything I can do for you. Typically younger children are going to just, this is what I want, and make it happen. I want this. They might not understand the extent of what it is they're asking for.
Yeah.
But when it comes to, unfortunately, when you're dealing with an infant or a toddler who doesn't have a voice, who can't tell you that something may or may not be wrong, it's very hard. You see a lot of children go home because of that. As a child gets a voice when they're older, they can kind of say, I really want this. And when we have our monthly meetings with workers and stuff like that, they'll ask questions like, if there's anything I can do for you, what could I do? And her answer has always been, I want to be adopted by Chris and Nicole. This is what it is. And every time that she sticks to that answer, and then the workers will come back and say, we ask her this and ask her that, just for a bit of transparency. And she keeps saying all she wants is this. And, it's nice that she does have a bit of a say.
I just picture a 9-year-old in like a power suit with like a briefcase, this is the way it is, it's just like, that's amazing.
And she's ready for it.
I like how I've assigned myself as emotional guardian and self-appointed auntie to every child we discuss on this podcast. I've already picked out her birthday presents.
You do to that a lot.
I get really excited.
Yeah.
I can't help it. Well, I think it actually speaks, Chris, to part of the reason that Chris and I started this podcast is to create resources. And one of the things that Chris and I really had to struggle with is, curbing some of our colloquialisms and perhaps some cuss words and things and languages that we talk about, and framing it in a way that if this could be a resource for teenagers or young people going through things, we want to be the thing that we needed when we were at those ages. Mm-hmm. So it is really hard not to become emotionally invested in our OUP adoptees and family. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we want to show every side. Chris and I go through all of our DMs and emails, and we'll actually take the time to unpack what people say. So if something that we've said in any way upsets you or triggers you and you want to discuss it, send it to our email and start it off in an open way, and know that we will respond and we will take the time. Oftentimes we'll say, do you want to have a phone conversation? So that is another thing too.
Yeah, it's challenging because of the topic. I mean, what we're talking about is so sensitive, it's intimate, it's personal. So we kind of knew going into it that we're going to offend someone. We're going to say something incorrectly. And again, we've said in the very beginning that we are not experts. We are kind of on this journey with you, but the platform that we're trying to develop is more of an open platform for everyone to share their stories so that people can hear it, because without talking about it, you're just going to assume things, or like, I don't know anything about foster care because I've never really talked to anyone that is in that space, but the only way to learn about it is to talk to people like you, and to hear these sides. And, I just wish, for any of these viewers that are, or listeners, just understand that, this is kind of a learning curve and there's going to be ebbs and flows here, but just understand, we are kind of, a lot of this information is brand new to Claire and I, and we're just learning as we go. So if some people can just be slightly understanding over that, because I know it's going to be quick. Some people are very reactive because, like I said, these are all triggers and it's all sensitive, but just understand that, we're not trying to highlight one side over the other. We want to share both, and it's really, it's not about Claire and I anymore. It's really more about,
no, it's not
about you, Chris, and everyone else, so.
And to that point, so adoption really is such a polarizing topic. And it's something that Chris and I identified in the community, that there are so many separate subsects of people in the community. And so people who are in our community, so such as like foster parents, like yourself, we've had people who were created by, technology assisted birthing methods and whatnot. And that we've all been put into these categories and these boxes separately. And if we could just come together and have discussions, but we've come to the conclusion in these discussions that this is a real time, as we said, view into Chris's my journey. So this is going to be a great view that Chris and I may look back on some of our past episodes and cringe, right? But I might get to a point in my journey where I'm saying, oh, gross, why did I say that? Like, oh, facepalm. But no, this is literally as I'm experiencing stuff real time. So, and like talking to you, I'm learning about foster care in a way that we only as adoptees hear about foster care as a footstool into what we were doing. And I was talking today with Nicole, one of our past interviews, that we really would love to see who fostered us. That's a missing piece, that we wish on adoption records that our foster parents were there, because what you do, we want to know who was there with us for our first years of life. For adoptees, we don't have that discussion even with our adoptive parents. There's a year and a half for you, Chris, and I think a month and 2 weeks for me where I don't know anything, right? Those are like your pivotal years. Chris, you can speak to that too, because yours is much more crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I just know from a birth parent search that my brothers and I were separated because according to this post-adoption services, they said that foster mothers back in the 80s couldn't take care of a lot of children. So they found 2 foster mothers in the same neighborhood. But the more digging and the more Korean adoptees that I met said that was all kind of like a lie, that foster mothers were taking care of 10 plus babies. So there is a lot of, and this is more towards just Korean adoption and the societal things and cultural things, but the system over there's a lot of sketchy things. I've been in contact with post-adoption services in Seoul, and they have been giving me the runaround for, it's going on 4 or 5 years now, or maybe 4 years, where they won't give me the email address of our caseworker that met with us once a month for medical checkups. She still works in this this organization, but they won't give me her contact information. And they keep on saying, well, she doesn't know anything. I'm like, well, okay, I don't care if she knows anything. I just want to meet her. But the fact that they're withholding this email address makes me believe that she does know something, and they just don't want me to contact her or connect with her.
But to me, you have every right to know.
Yeah. And it's frustrating.
Where you came from and how you came about.
Yeah.
And like who changed your diapers and like who held you and like who knows what your first smile, like your first steps. And like, for me, it's just so crazy. And we were talking to one of our past adoptees, Nicole. She had this man, Jay, who was helping her find all
Birth
of these
Finder.
people.
I think that's his, yeah.
I know. I'm very excited to mobilize and get to know Jay. But I think that you don't realize as a foster parent how important you and your wife, Nicole, how important of a role that you play, and that, you know, I think it'll be interesting as these adoptees get older and they turn 18 and a half, which crazy to me. That's when you get to know. Can't like 18. I can vote. I can buy smokes. I can drink, but I can't know till 18 and a half that you'll have these kids that are going to come looking for you because you guys are important. You're very important.
Mm-hmm.
I get that 100%. There's been times where we have had children in our care for a year. And then when we've seen them like at a fair or something like that, just in the city. And they said, I haven't told her anything. And I'd like to get that out of her life. And so they're going, at some point, they're going to go, why, you know, from the time I was born to the time I was one, where are my pictures? What is my story? How was my losing my first tooth? So we actually don't get to know, it's hard for us because children will leave. And we are constantly going, what's happened to them? How are they doing?
Oh my gosh!
But that's what I just wrote down the word inspiring, because I think the way you're describing is that you could totally, like you said, you could take on a child for a year, 2 years, 3 years. You were invested. You're invested, and then all of a sudden they're taken away, and then it's just that's got to be the most jarring thing ever. And then to then turn around and say, you know what, that's unfortunate, but every child that comes in, we're going to treat them like they're our own. It's so easy in my mind for anyone to just become jaded and say, you know what, what's the point of investing all my heart and emotion to someone and then having it ripped from me? You know, so I'm just going to be kind of like closed off and cold and put up this wall. But again, I just give you so much credit to be able to continue to have that mindset going into any situation with any child. Like we need more people like you in this world. So
what resources are allotted for foster parents and the system to assist in family preservation?
There's opportunities when there's a specific background. CAS will actually ask what your background is if you have a specific religious background. If the child in care is Indigenous, they actually will try to keep them with other Indigenous families. They try to keep those core aspects of the child with whatever potential family they're with. So they're extensive in their questionnaires and stuff as to what are your religious beliefs and what is your cultural background.
Mm-hmm.
How can you provide this to the child? What steps can you take? They will ask us as well.
Just quickly to follow up to one of the things, part 2 of that question, when you're fostering in the instances where there is the hope to reunite the family, do the birth families, are there visitations, or what's that like when you're just kind of in the instances where you're saying you're just helping them out? Like what are the visitation?
The relief.
Yeah.
So if they're on, what are visitations on our end or
on the biological parent's end? So if you know that the kid is just there, and it's the hope that the birth parent is able to reunite, like what's that like? What's that dynamic between, like, do they have access or like?
So depending on the situation they're in, they can very much get a hold of their workers. So there's several workers for each. So as foster parents, we have a worker. Then in certain instances, the child will have their own worker, and then the biological parent will have their own worker as well.
Okay.
So what they're doing is the biological parents will be talking to their worker. They'll say, all right, well, I'm going to be here. Access happens quite often. They just set up dates and they're met at a middle ground area, whether it's at a CAS building, at a park, or whatever setting, depending on how it is for the child. If it's not safe for the child, they will pull access. If the parent doesn't show, like there's times when we would send children out to go to access visits and the parents won't even show up.
Whoa.
They won't show up. They won't call. The child sits there and they wait. And they have to sit there and wait for a good amount of time before a driver will bring them back home and they've missed their meeting. So they tend to be a little lenient on things like that sometimes, in my own personal experience. So if, say, a biological parent missed a visit and they canceled it or whatever, or just didn't show up, if they miss like 3 of them in a row, then they've got to ask for it again. If they go to 2, they miss 1, they go to 1 and they miss 1, they go to 2 and they miss 1, that can continue on. So it can be harmful to the child. So we just hope that if there's a parent out there who's really trying hard and they're going through and they have access to their children for visits and stuff, or to keep in touch, or whatever it may be, that could be multiple times a week. That could be once a month. In some instances, in ours, we're trying to talk about, having visits in a year, keeping it open to step parents and biological parents and grandparents to come to birthday parties or Christmas things. Like it all depends on the situation you're in. But for the instant, so basically when a child's first brought into care, the access to the parent, if it's healthy and if it's safe, can happen quite often. Okay. And it is easy enough for them to just keep in touch with their worker and set up those times. We kind of mesh together and see what works for schedules and everything, and they will have access.
Thank you for listening to part 1 of this 2-part series. Part 2 will be released next week. Please check out our Instagram and Patreon for more exciting things. If you'd like to connect with us on Instagram or TikTok, you can find us at
Origins Unknown Podcast.
You can follow my co-host at
Beyond the Tats.
You can find me at
Sea Bear Huntington. We're also on Twitter. Follow us at
Unknown Podcast. If you'd like to visit our website, it's
originsunknownpodcast.com. Also, if you'd like to send us questions, share your story, or even just say hi, you can send us an email at
hello@originsunknownpodcast.com. Special thanks to Pace Randolph for writing, performing, and producing the audio for our podcast. Follow him on Spotify for more wonderful music.